Hey everyone, welcome back to another FOI video. Today we're going to be going over Task E, Elements of Effective Teaching in a Professional Environment. Sorry I haven't been able to put these out as often as I'd like. I've just had plenty of other projects that I've been working on. And if you guys haven't seen the latest one, here's a video from it. What's up guys, I'm Grayson Taylor with Cloud Club Aviation, and this is West 22nd. If you guys think that you would enjoy that, click the link in the description. It'll take you guys over to it. But let's go ahead and hop right into the document that I've created for this. So if you guys are wanting this as well, it will be in the link in the description also. And then the way that I made this, we're just going to be following along the ACS for Flight Instructor Airplane. And we've got Task E right here. So if we scroll up real quick, there's something special about Task E. If you read the note from the Area of Operation 1, it's going to say that the evaluator must ask Task E and Task F and at least one other task. So Task E is one of the first required tasks that are going to be going over your FOIs. I'm not saying that Task E is any more important than any of the other FOIs that we've talked about previously, because like it says right there, that the examiner can ask any of the other tasks. So I think that you should still study all of them, but Task E and Task F, they're pretty important because they're literally telling you that it's going to be on your check ride. So don't go into it underprepared. So let's go ahead and hop over to this doc with all that said. All right, and then number 1, we've got Aviation Instructor Responsibilities. You might be surprised, but it is our job to help learners learn. And learning should be enjoyable and interesting. So you have the choice of being able to make a lesson very cut and dry, or you can make it really beneficial, fun, interactive. Remember, you have the most influence on a lesson. And then next up, we've got providing adequate instruction. So we want to carefully and accurately analyze your learner's personality, thinking, and ability. And whenever I read this, I think it's funny because it sounds so intimidating, but really it's just listening with intent, being purposeful when you listen to your student, and you're just trying to really understand who they are. And all of these bullet points below are going to kind of list why we need to do that. Tailored instruction. Everyone is going to be different. Now, there's no one size fits all when it comes to teaching. There's always different approaches, especially with different types of learners. What you're going to experience is you're going to have your slow learners, and then you're going to have your fast learners. And you don't have to completely change how you teach, but there are some adjustments that you have to create there. So being able to tailor that instruction for whether if they're fast, slow, just taking their own time and being everyone's got their own pace. And then next up, we've got awareness of errors. You want to be aware of any errors that you may have previously done during instruction. Like, for example, I've been instructing for about 6 months now, and there's sometimes where I might teach something a way that isn't as good as another way, and as soon as you kind of ping that, okay, hey, I want to change how I'm teaching this so that I can further better my own instruction, and then also how it benefits your learner as well. All right, and then that leads us into instructor development. It's really easy to kind of plateau when you get your CFI or your CFII, because it's the first time that you've gotten to get paid for being a flight instructor or getting paid just to be a pilot in general. And you have taken so much studying to get to that point, it's very easy to be like, okay, I don't need to study anything anymore. But we want to continuously develop our skills, develop our knowledge. I've got a student that is working on her commercial right now, and I'm trying to be better at giving situational awareness scenarios because she's entering her check ride prep. And I think actually, yeah, probably out of focus, but I've got the commercial oral guidebook just next to my bed. I don't read it every night, and I don't dive too deep into it, but I just hop in there, look at anything that's kind of not talking about often, or find different scenario-based questions so that I can quiz her the next time that I'm with her. So just continuously developing those skills will help you and your learners out along the way. All right, and then we have training to establish standards of performance. Instructors fail their students when they allow subpar performance and don't teach them necessary knowledge. We want to strive for excellence. So don't just settle for, plus or minus 100, plus or minus 10 degrees. We want to be continuously pushing those standards, especially when you're getting into check ride prep. You want those standards so small that when they go on their check ride, that practice that you have done is not even going to get close to them busting a check ride because you've allowed plus or minus 100. So strive for excellence and don't let them just get by with the minimums. Then we've got emphasizing the positive. So the instructor has a huge influence on how the lesson goes, just like what we talked about earlier. I like to make the first lessons really enjoyable, just taking them up flying, really getting them hooked. And then the second lesson, I like to just nail them with a weight and balance, be like, boom, look at what you signed up for. You can't leave now because you already know what it's like to fly. And then the second one, we've got emphasize the positive, because positive instruction results in positive learning. That probably rings a bell from previous FOI, the behaviorism, right? Positive stimuli. All right, and then we have minimize learner frustration. MacBag. If you guys haven't heard this mnemonic, memorize it. It's a very popular one. So to minimize learner frustration, one way is to motivate our students. As you would imagine, motivating students completely helps learner frustration with all of the previous FOIs we've talked about. A is going to be approach learners as individuals. So each person has a different personality. Hey, that actually reminds us of tailored instruction because everyone is different. So you got to meet that personality and approach everyone as individuals. And then we have C for constructive criticism. Now, being able to constructively criticize is a skill in of itself. I won't dive too deep into it, but I do recommend reading anything about it on articles or watching videos, because we as people like to be presented info a certain way. And constructively criticizing really minimizes defense mechanisms in people. And simply put, it's you telling your learner what they did wrong and then them walking away happy or feeling good about the conversation. As you can imagine, that is a really, really good skill, not only to have as a CFI, but in life as general. So being able to constructive criticize can help you a lot. And I do have one tool that I do want to talk about right now. And I've probably talked about it previously, but I don't really remember if I have. So for this example, we're going to use the word now instead of but. And here is the scenario. We're coming into land and we're doing pattern work, and our learner is holding center line really well, but they're not rounding off in time. And so basically they're just hitting the nose wheel and we're porpoising down the runway. So there's two different ways of presenting this info. And this is number one. Say we're on the upwind and it's about time to start talking about how we can fix it. Hey, that was a really good way of being able to hold center line, but you just smack the nose wheel and we porpoise down the runway. And then this is the option number two. Hey, that was a really good job on being able to hold center line. Now let's work on rounding off a little bit sooner. Now those two sentences are very similar, although the word but literally strips all of the compliment or all of the positive that you had said previously and just focuses on what you did wrong. So when you implement the word now, it sounds so much more like, okay, that's great job. We've got center line down. Now let's start working on something else. As you can tell, that's going to provide a lot better of a positive stimuli after the end of the conversation. A lot of people talk about the compliment sandwich, which means starting off on a good note, putting in the constructive criticism area, and then ending off on a good note. Although I just think that if you still do the compliment sandwich and you use the word but in it, it still strips everything away from the previous one. And it seems like you're trying to make up what you but it was a good job. So the compliment sandwich is a great tool also. I still think that you should be using the word now rather than but. It's very powerful, even though it's just one word. All right, and flowing into that, we have keep learners informed of their progress. This helps people just, not get so antsy. I was an antsy student. I wanted to be like, where am I? I don't know how I'm doing. Am I like where I'm supposed to be? So being able to keep learners informed of their progress is very helpful. And then B, this is going to be consistent. So always use your checklists. Hold your students accountable. Hold yourself accountable for doing stuff like that. If you are teaching to not do anything until you're off the runway, like cleaning up, configuring, you better not clean up while you're on the runway. Don't touch the flaps until you're completely off. So being consistent, because you'll build trust in your student, like that you're not being a hypocrite. All right, and then next up we have A for admit when you're wrong. We all have mistakes, just own up to them. Obviously you don't want to make them too often, but once in the blue moon, when you do, especially if your student is the one that calls you out, just own up to them. They're going to be hyped about it. They're going to be like, yeah, I got him. I got teach. I stumped him. And, it's kind of a positive stimuli for them. But it causes too many problems when you act like you know what you're talking about when you don't. So just admit when you're wrong. All right, and then flowing into number 2, we have flight instructor responsibilities, including supervision and surveillance during training. So we want to mold the pilot into a safe one that takes a professional approach to aviation. So ensuring learner's skill set, you are responsible for making sure that the learner is ready to solo. Students should consistently prove the abilities to perform the maneuvers by themselves. You're not just going to endorse your student to go solo after the first good landing that they make. We want to see that constantly and consistently. So ensuring that they're ready is a very big responsibility that you have as a professional instructor. Next up, we have physiological obstacles for flight learners. Learners may react negatively to certain factors. Please don't ignore them and don't ridicule them for it. They can often be overcome once they learn their nature of causes. So, for example, we've got strange noises, G-forces, motion sickness, fear of small airplanes. So, when people are in an environment that they don't understand or aren't too familiar with, little things that might not be a threat can cause them to think that it's a threat. I don't know if you've ever taken up anyone and they're like, what's that noise? What's that noise? But, or for example, you're checking the mags and the engine decreases in power and they don't know what you're doing and they don't know that you're checking it for redundancy. So it's actually a very, very safe thing that we're doing when both mag checks are good, but they think that since there's a loss in power in the engine and they don't understand like exactly what you're doing, they can get very nervous about it. And for a valid reason, you have their life in their hands and you're about to go take off and they see the engine decreases in performance. So just don't ridicule them for it and don't ignore certain factors. Next up, see and avoid. Keep your eyes outside when the student is performing a maneuver. Don't keep your eyes tucked inside because they're just going to be focusing on the maneuver. You should be taking a look out for traffic and also keeping an eye on how they're doing. You've got a lot of things going on. Next up, pilot currency versus proficiency. If you are at this point in your training, you should definitely know the difference between currency versus proficiency, and we should be implementing it every day we fly. Be current and proficient in the aircraft and encourage each pilot to learn as much as possible. So currency, that's the bare minimums that the FAA says you need. And then proficiency, this is when a pilot has practiced enough recently to where they are a safe and competent pilot. Competent pilot, that is a huge one, So pilot supervision and surveillance. Instructors supervise students on solo flights, cross countries, local flights, and then they're also responsible to supervise their progress in training. This second is really huge with Part 61 training because there's not much of a structure there, and you could be the anchor for your learner on being able to have some sort of structure and being able to supervise their progress in training, making sure that they're on track. So starting off with qualifications, we want to be thoroughly familiar with the functions, characteristics, and use of all flight instruments, avionics, and systems. At our flight school, we kind of make a joke about it, but we've got like a Frankenstein fleet. So like every plane has just different avionics. It's got a different engine. Most of them are 180 horsepower, but we also have cruise props, climb props, and they're all like on different types of airplanes. Even constant speed propellers. So being thoroughly familiar with the functions, characteristics, avionics, all that with that airplane is very crucial for you because you're going to be teaching it. I always recommend for my students, have 2 to 3 like favorites in the fleet, because we don't want to spread too much of their attention on just trying to learn avionics. So I always say, like, hey, have a primary and then a secondary airplane. That way that they can really focus on the things that are happening inside that airplane. And for the second bullet point, we've got stay up to date on certification requirements and new info. So for example, when I was actually going through my training, they made this change right here. So they used to print CFI expiration dates on your card, but they don't anymore. They just changed that CFI licenses don't have expiration dates anymore. And also, what you're probably familiar with is 6165 Juliet. They actually changed that from 6165 Hotel during my training as well. So just being updated on, new information, requirements that you have to do as a flight instructor. All right, and then next up, we've got professionalism, or also known as SAD PP. I love to think of that because it's so not professional. It really helps me remember the mnemonic. But the instructor lays the foundation for the learner's aviation career. Instructors need to be professional, and these are the ways that an instructor can be professional. So starting off with the S, we have sincerity. We always want to be straightforward and honest. Being sincere is a great quality to have, as not only as a professional, but just as a person in general. And next up, we've got acceptance of the learner. So we've kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but instructors need to accept the learners the way that they are. We should never degrade the learner. We want to accept rather than ridicule. Then D is going to be demeanor. Attitude and behavior can contribute a lot to a professional image. And in the most 2025 way, what is the vibe a person radiates? That's basically demeanor. And I hate that I had to use that type of terminology, but that's kind of what's happening. Do you walk into a room and suck the oxygen out of it, or do you walk in there and you're in ambient light? So the demeanor is a huge, huge portion of being a flight instructor. And if you guys haven't already, go ahead and click that like and subscribe button. That helps me out so much. But let's get right back into it. All right, the first P is going to be personal appearance and habits. You should dress to impress. You don't have to come in as a suit and tie, unless your school requires it, but just coming in, not within sweatpants or anything like that. Instructors are expected to be neat and clean. So hygiene, do yourself a favor, do your student a favor, have your students do you a favor by being good on hygiene. Having a stick of deodorant on you, brush your teeth, shower, please. All of these things are going to help not stink up the cockpit. Next up, we have P for proper language. So we want to speak positively and descriptively. Try to avoid the overuse of profanity. Now, I'm not saying that I don't use profanity every once in a while, and it can actually be pretty powerful. Sometimes your learner needs to get hyped by using that, let's just say, emphasizing words. But we don't want to cause it as like a habit or using it too often, because it can really, really disrupt that professional image that you have. So next up, we have professional development. Don't become complacent. Kind of what we talked about earlier. We always want to be working, learning a little bit more character development kind of wise. So continuing your education. We want to go, if there's seminars around or workshops in the WINGS program, there's a lot of opportunities for us to continue our education. And then R is going to be reflective teaching. We want to continue to self-reflect on what you can improve on. This is dating back to a previous FOI, reflective thought theory, being able to reflect on what you've done and learn from it. Then library, current procedures and publications, additional ratings, so additional category and class ratings, or the Gold Seal Flight Instructor Certificate. When you're becoming a CFI, these are some goals to have in mind. I think you need 8 out of 10 passes to get your Gold Seal. Strive for 10, keep going at it. Look for more additional ratings and continue your education that way. And then staying up to date, kind of like what we talked about earlier, when New info is always coming out and things are always changing. CFI expiration, 61, 65 Juliet, things like that. And then number 5, we have the instructor ethics and conduct. I'm just going to go down the list for us, but it's going to be make safety the number 1 priority. 2, develop and exercise good judgment. Recognize, manage risk effectively. Be accountable for his or her actions. Act with responsibility and courtesy. Adhere to prudent operating practices, and then adhere to applicable laws and regulations. That is the instructor ethics and conduct. All right, and then that pretty much sums up task E. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and comment it down below, especially if you guys have any ideas of what new videos I should make after I'm done with the FOI series. Go ahead and comment that as well. But I really appreciate you guys, and I'm going to be working on task F here in a little bit so that you guys can get out there and pass that check ride. I really appreciate your guys' time, and I'll see you next time.